All right, let's just jump right into it. Welcome back, Focus Learners, to another explainer, where we take deep, complex ideas and break them down so you can actually use them in the real world. Today, we're tackling something pretty mind-bending from an author named Xu Feng. His essay is called How to Break Out of Your Cognitive Boundaries, and we're talking about the invisible walls that basically dictate every single aspect of our lives. We're talking everything from our careers to our families, all the way down to how we view our own existence.
I know, it's a super heavy question right off the bat, isn't it? Are you living inside a prison of your own making? Xu Feng starts his essay by challenging us to really look at our daily vibe. You might have a totally comfortable life, good job, nice apartment, the whole shebang. But do you ever just feel stifled? Like there's this lingering sense of oppression or misery that you just can't quite put your finger on? Well, if you do, the author suggests the culprit isn't necessarily your boss or the economy. It might actually be the invisible boundaries you've literally constructed inside your own mind. So what exactly are these things? Xu Feng uses this absolutely brilliant metaphor. He says cognitive boundaries are basically like walls. Now, walls are inherently bad, right? They give you shelter, they can give you a cozy, comfortable home to live out your days in total safety, but walls can also be a suffocating prison. They protect us, sure, but they severely limit our potential by keeping us boxed into what we already know and what we already believe is true. And when those walls start to feel less like a home and more like a prison cell, it is definitely time to knock them down. Okay, so how do we actually pull that off? Xu Feng lays out a very specific roadmap here, and the absolute kicker is step 2, admit you might be wrong. Think about it. If you firmly believe that your worldview is flawless, you are never going to look for a door, let alone step outside of it. The author makes the case that letting go of our desperate need to always be right is literally the key that unlocks our personal confinement. Which brings us to this incredibly powerful, kind of counterintuitive quote from the text. The sufferings in this world are mostly created by those who think they're right. We usually think of suffering as coming from, malice or ignorance, but Xu Feng points out that the people who endure the most intense hardship and create the most suffering are usually 100% convinced of their own righteousness. Every time you insist you are right, you're essentially cementing another brick in your cognitive boundary. You're building your own prison. Moving on to our next section, the societal walls, seeking saviors, and breaking borders. So we've been talking about the individual mind, but these boundaries definitely don't just stop with us. They happen on a massive societal scale. Entire cultures can get trapped behind shared cognitive walls. Xu Feng uses a really fascinating example to show this impartially, critiquing a historical mindset in Chinese culture, this long-standing hope for a wise ruler or an Eastern sage to just appear and save everyone. He argues that perpetually waiting around for a savior is a massive cognitive boundary. The alternative? Relying on legality, systems, and procedures to actually solve problems. Remaining stuck waiting for a hero rather than building robust procedures just keeps an entire society confined. But what happens when a massive group of people successfully shatters one of these societal walls? Xu Feng gives us this incredible case study of the mindset to change the country or immigrate. He points directly to the Indian diaspora as a prime example of a global cognitive breakthrough. Instead of staying confined to the geographic and economic boundaries they were born into, millions made the active choice to seek opportunities far, far beyond their borders. And you guys, the scale of this is literally staggering. 32 million. According to the author's data, that is the number of Indians who have formally renounced their citizenship to become citizens of other countries. Just wrap your head around the sheer mental leap required to break a geographic boundary on that scale. It is a total, massive rejection of the wall that says, I must stay exactly where I was planted. And just look at the ripple effects of breaking that boundary. Xu Feng rapidly lists off the global impact. You've got people of Indian descent leading in UK politics, like Sajid Javid. They're top executives at US tech giants. The author even notes his own travels, seeing Indian-owned businesses thriving in places like Zimbabwe and South Africa, running shops in Fiji and Vanuatu, and managing hospitality across Canada. By just smashing that one cognitive boundary of their homeland, this diaspora unlocked insane opportunities and wealth for generations. All right, let's head into our third section, the personal walls, redefining work, wealth, and family. Let's zoom back in from the global stage to our own daily lives. How do these invisible walls dictate our relationships? Think about how we define something as basic as family.
The traditional wall says family equals strictly blood relatives. If you live entirely inside that wall, you're only ever going to have a tiny handful of people to support you. But Shui Feng proposes knocking that wall down. What if you treated anyone you are close to as family, totally regardless of blood? Suddenly, your support network expands dramatically. The author notes that by treating strangers as family, he gets care that is sometimes way more effective than biological ties. Your life completely changes based on which of those mindsets you adopt.
We see the exact same thing with careers. You've got the graduate and find a job wall versus the graduate and start a business mindset. If a parent's cognitive boundary is locked onto their kid finding a job, that kid's whole education becomes about learning formalities to please a boss. But push that boundary toward entrepreneurship, the whole focus shifts to practicality and building things. That one single early invisible wall creates huge disparities in how a person actually experiences life. And oh man, we cannot talk about boundaries without talking about money. A super common invisible wall is this belief that, hey, without money, you literally cannot get anything done. Suffin warns that living your life trapped inside this specific box breeds intense superficiality. And worse, this obsession with money acts as a thick wall that blocks out life's deeper blessings. You start ignoring love, morality, justice, and deeper spiritual connections, like the Tao. The wall of money literally locks the absolute best parts of the human experience out of your life.
Which brings us to our final and definitely most profound section, the existential breakthrough beyond life and death. We're going to slow things down just a little bit here, because Shui Feng takes us into the ultimate cognitive boundary, our existential view on the very end of life itself. The belief that death is the absolute dark end of life. For a lot of people, this is just scientific certainty. But Shui Feng asks us to view this as a cognitive boundary. From his perspective, holding firmly to the idea that death is the final end creates a massive, impenetrable wall. It's a wall that he says literally prevents us from ever finding the door to heaven or recognizing a higher spiritual continuation.
And tragically, this ultimate wall can become lethal. Shui Feng uses this framework to sensitively explain the absolute tragedy of suicide. When someone is completely trapped within their cognitive boundaries, when those walls are so incredibly high and thick that they literally can't see a single opportunity or find any reason to keep going, that is when it happens. It's the heartbreaking result of being entirely suffocated by an invisible prison of the mind. But, and this is so important, there is a profound light at the end of this tunnel. Shui Feng points out that if, in that absolute critical moment of despair, a person could somehow just break free from those confining thoughts, they would have this beautiful realization. They'd look around and go, wow, life's path is so vast. The second that wall falls, the sheer universe of possibilities that were hidden just out of sight suddenly becomes crystal clear.
And that brings us right to our conclusion, stepping into a vast world.
Because really, that is the core takeaway of this entire explainer today. Whether it's a societal expectation, a rigid view on your career, an obsession with money, or even your fundamental understanding of existence, stepping beyond your cognitive boundaries doesn't just stop the suffering, it opens up an incredible, vast world. So I want to leave you with this question to chew on today. Which of your invisible walls will you tear down today to see the vast path ahead? Think about where you insist you are right. Think about where you feel the most stuck. You've got the sledgehammer in your hands right now. All you have to do is admit you might be wrong and take that step outside. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and until next time, keep breaking those boundaries.